Okay, good morning. It's 10 o'clock, and it is time for open hours. This is going to be a bit of a special edition because this week all of the YUI remoters are actually in Sunnyvale at the same time, so we are literally sitting around the conference table in the physical presence of each other in meet space. So,
and boy does it smell.
Yes. And so the audio is going to be probably a little bit funky because normally we all have headsets on, and so we get nice microphones and whatnot. Instead, we'll be getting, odd background echo and things like that.
Standard Sunnyvale experience.
Yeah. So if you have trouble hearing anybody talking, then just speak up in chat, and we'll, repeat as needed. But hopefully the audio is coming through all right. This week we just wanted to check in with Dave while we have him in punching distance to see what he's been up to these last couple of months, because we haven't checked in with him for a little while, and it's always pretty exciting and interesting, the stuff that he's working on, and usually doesn't get publicized nearly enough. So let's share all of that goodness. Just a bit of news before we get into that content. I just got a notice from Evan Goer this morning that the book, the YUI 3 cookbook, is in its final draft. He's putting in the final edits for it, and the scheduled release date for that is right around early May. Evan, if you're actually in the room, because you're not actually in the physical room with us here. Yeah, you are. Hey, you can just stop on by if you want to. But you can confirm that. It's all good. So if you are interested in reading voluminous text about YUI 3 on dead trees, then that is on its way in May.
Doesn't it also come out in ebook form a little earlier, maybe?
I don't know. I think Evan might be heading this way, so he might either confirm in chat if he's not, or otherwise. Yeah, we'll wait for him to show up. Cool. So, I guess without further ado, Eric, unless you have anything interesting to share.
No, let's let Dave get into it.
All right, Dave, let's get into it. What the hell have you been doing?
A whole lot of nothing. As you know, I phoned it in. I don't do a whole lot. Zach does all my coding. So I got my 12-year-old at home slaving away on a MacBook. So I've got two really cool things. I guess we can start off with Loader first. We can talk about some of the things that I put into the 3.5 Loader that make it a little nicer for us to deal with. So the biggest thing is the async, is the fact that get in 3.4, get got the ability to load an array of URLs asynchronously and then tell you when they're all done. In the past, we've always called Loader asynchronous, but it wasn't technically asynchronous. What it would do is it would go out and fetch a URL at a time.
Oh, serial operation.
Right.
It would fetch one, and then when that one returned, it would fetch another one.
Yes.
So these are now operating in parallel.
Right. So if you had, say a combo URL that would load, 3 different combo URLs because you had a massive amount of items, it would load one, pull it all down, process it, figure out what it needed to do, and then go load the second one, do it again, and iteratively do that over and over again. So what we're doing now is we actually resolve all the modules up front, and then we say, go get everything. Give me everything that I know about. I want it all, regardless of whether it's a combo URL or a static URL.
So help me understand. So in practice, when you're talking about the YUI distro like 3.4 and going back, if you're just pointing to the seed on the CDN, then the URLs that it was loading in serial would just be combo handled URLs anyway. So it's not likely to impact the majority use case unless you're using so many modules that URL needs to get split across multiple script files, right?
Well, the other thing is that in 3.5 we also shrunk the max URL length.
Oh, really?
So we made the max URL length 1024 instead of 2048.
Was that just for?
It's for performance. It's for mobile devices. It's for some proxies that we had issues with that the 2048 was getting too big.
Performance
to
and
go
mobile
across.
devices, explain.
Well, the URLs, having to pass it through a lot of the proxies on mobile devices through like their gateways for 3G, they don't hold that much data. So the URLs end up being too long. So we did a lot of research with the mail team, and actually that's why we came up with the 1024, because that was the 90% use case that they had that was a successful URL. The ones over that actually was failing a few times, depending on the part of the country or the part of the world that they were coming from, or what kind of a proxy that they were passing through. Because Mail has a really hardcore loading strategy that whenever a loader fails, they go in and they actually change that max URL length on the fly to something a little smaller, and then they try it again. And then if it fails again, they change it to something a little smaller, and then they try it again. Well, they log each one of those. So at that point, we got really good stats from them that 1024 was a really safe bet for us to pick as our default. It can be overridden. So we did make it to where you can pass the configuration in. It's overridden not only on the global level, but on the instance level and on the combo source itself.
So if you have groups that are specifying the combos,
you can actually put the URL link, the max URL link inside the group, inside the main modules, or as a global, and it will work for all of them.
Awesome.
So that way, if you know that you want this thing bigger, you can go ahead and do it, and I'm not going to stop you from it because it's your environment. But we're trying to do the best what's for the 90% use case out there and make it easier on it.
Okay, so the bottom line is that it's now more likely that use statements are going to end up getting multiple script tags. So that would have previously, given the get situation in 3.4.1, that would have broken across script tags that would have been loaded serially.
Right.
But now they're loaded in parallel asynchronously.
Yeah, and it will still run through the same logic that it used to do. So it will go out and fetch everything at once, and when it comes in, it post-processes everything. And if it finds something that came in that it didn't know about, it'll go out and do it again. So, for example, if gallery was in there, it would go out and fetch the gallery item that it needed. Just like it used to do, only this time we're doing it all up front instead of one little piece at a time. And that makes loading them from a static without combo actually faster because of the fact that it's fetching them all at once and not one script tag at a time, iteratively over and over again.
And also for just doing any non-combo handled custom modules served off your own server, which I don't recommend anyway. You would then run into that serial loading really fast, especially if you had a lot of modules and you weren't serving it with combo handled. So this will be taking advantage of all of the parallel loading of scripts in the browser. So that even that experience is going to get a lot better just out of the box for custom modules. So that'll be good. Yeah. That being said, use a combo handler.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing that makes it a little more interesting too is that in 3.4 we added the combo separator config, so you can specify the string that we use to combine the files together. And by default, it's the ampersand. But depending on the environment you're in, like Python, a lot of the Python loaders like to have semicolons in there instead. So we wanted to be able to let people use whatever they want. But the problem with that was that people were loading their custom modules from their local combo, but they were loading ours from the combo handler. So that configuration value is also available in groups and in modules themselves. So if you had several modules, you could actually put the combo separator in for those, and when they put them together, it'll use that combo separator. So that you can still have the AND to pull from our CDN, but then their local modules they can rewrite them however they want to go to their own combo servers.
I think that's a ticket I had open for a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
All right.
But yeah, I've been doing a lot of work with several different combo handlers in different languages. That way we can figure out which ones we want to say this is our recommended approach for your language. And I've ran into a couple of them that use semicolons, they use commas, they use slashes. They do all kinds of weird stuff. I saw one that had a backslash instead of a forward slash. That was the separator. And it's just like, okay, so make it configurable so they can pick what they want. Got it. They can use a comma, a semicolon. They could use anything. Yeah, whatever they wanted to.
Unicode snowman separated.
Yep.
And that was largely work that went into Get, and you're just leveraging the work that was already in Get. Or there's also the configuration.
Right. So there's the configuration stuff. Yeah. So the big change in 3.5 is the fact that I added the resolve method to loader in 3.4 that you could give it a set of modules and you could say, resolve this for me, and it would come back with this object bag of everything that you needed to go fetch these modules. And
is that y.resolve or is that loader.resolve?
It's loader.resolve. Well, I didn't even have time to pull that up yet, so I couldn't show that one yet.
That's some small text on there.
Yeah, but it'll get bigger. So you can see here the example of how to use the resolve method in Loader. So basically you set up a loader just like you normally would. You give it a filter, base, a root, set whether you want it to combine or not, and you tell it what you want to require. And when you say loader.resolve, it will return this giant object bag of an array of JS strings, which are your URLs that you're going to load, an array of CSS strings of URLs you're going to load, and then it's going to return an array of JS modules, and that's all the loader metadata for every module that it resolved.
Okay, so it's going to be an array of objects.
Yes.
So that,
well, it's an object of arrays.
It's an object of arrays.
Yeah. So there's a property on this return object called JS.
Yeah.
And it's an array of all the URLs.
Right, but then the other one though is
it's also an array of objects.
It's an array of objects.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So those objects are the module metadata entries. So then you can get. So then you can use that to figure out what modules are going to be loaded or would be loaded by the module.
Yeah, it's just there for extra data. So the modules metadata that it puts in there is just in case anybody ever needs it. We don't use it in core a whole lot. No, actually we do. Yeah, so we use it inside of core whenever it goes out and fetches all these things. When it comes back, this is the group of metadata that it says, this is what I should have had. And then it compares it with what it found, and if something is different, then it goes out and gets the rest of it, you know. So it uses it to say, this is what I was supposed to go get. Now this is what I got. Is there anything different? And then it does all the attaching stuff. So the really cool thing with the resolve method is that it can be used anywhere. Since how it's not actually doing anything besides returning the list of arrays, you can use it in, say, the dependency configurator.
Yeah.
So we can have the dependency configurator give us all of this information, and it will bust out the combo URLs. It puts the combo separators in it. It does the filtering. It does everything that you would want it to do, so you don't have to do anything else to it.
Right.
You know, so and it separates out, you know, the different combo sources, all of it. And you could also use this in Node on the client side, or on the command line. Yeah, so on the command line to build an offline dependency generator. So if you had a list of modules that you wanted to load, you could use Loader in this format, and this out module there would give you file paths. Because you could set the base, instead of being, you know, like // or whatever, you can set it to the directory name you're in and say, here. Now,
so for example, if you're locally hosting, now tell me, this is just sort of theory, if you're locally hosting YUI modules and your own custom modules, you could use the resolve method in theory to do just a local script to say resolve the modules, resolve this list of modules, which are all the modules that I would ever use on all of my pages.
Exactly.
And that's going to return this big glom of objects, which is effectively loader metadata that you could potentially use to replace the loader metadata for serving out to your pages, just the loader metadata that is specifically for your site.
Yes.
And then you don't get the loader metadata that's corrupt for all the modules that you're not using.
Exactly.
Yay.
Yeah. And you could also use it to, you know, generate static files if you wanted to as well.
Yep.
So if you needed to generate, you know, like if you're working on like a mobile device or a all-in-one app that you didn't have a web server, you had the ability to serve a couple of JavaScript files and that's it. You could use this to combine all the JavaScript together that you need for everything in your application. Because this loader config also accepts the same stuff that the YUI config does. You can put your modules in here too. You know, so for example, you could here you could say modules foo, and it will resolve that too, because it's the same metadata that comes into the config. So it could be any of your metadata as well. So if you had a YUI config that you had like a JSON object, you could open that up in Node and plop it into this config, and then run resolve and get everything. All your modules, all our modules, everything at once.
Yeah, that's very nice. So, and yeah, so being able to, I guess that's a build time step as opposed to declaring out your modules in your in like a YUI config object where you're specifying your modules and stuff like that. So you actually get to go through that step in a build process, so it's a little bit faster.
Right. Yeah, so some of the other things, the little tweaks that we did too, is we did the ability to do this.
Yeah. Type detection based on module names as strings.
So you can do that. You can also not have to put a type in it here either.
That works on path and full path?
Yes. Oh. Yep, so it'll do path or full path. It'll figure out which one's which.
And there's some, who was it? Was it Eric? Was it you that brought up the point about cache busting in the CSS files?
Yeah, and Git already had this, Ryan, put in a smarter than just looking at the extension part to account for if people are using query strings for a version number or path parameters for a version number. So this will be smart with handling those.
Yeah, so I guess the module type auto detection is smart enough to recognize that you might be doing cache
using version URLs.
Yeah, so I'm actually using the regexes from Get because I can't guarantee that Get will be in with Loader at any given time. So I had to copy the regexes that Ryan's using in Get and applying them the same way here. So so it's the same logic. I just had to put the code in two different places because I can't guarantee Get will be there at any given time.
Right. And it's a regex. It's not the end of the world.
Right. One of the other things I added too was in patterns. When you set up a pattern now, patterns now also have the ability to support a test function. So instead of basically using this as an index of check, which is basically what it did before, the test function now basically returns something like that. So that's the default function. Right, so that's the default one. It just converts it over to that. But at this point, you can do whatever you want inside of this test function to return true or false on what you want to do with it. So that makes it really powerful to be able to build like an AMD style loader. Which
wait, what's the string and name? What are those parameters?
There's the string. And actually I think it's M. Should be. So it actually takes the module that it's working on.
Oh, I see.
And the string, and then compares it to find out whether the module name has an index of that string.
Huh. I thought you were using that to resolve it to a module. You were using a string to resolve it to a module.
Yeah, well, it's up here somewhere. So actually it should be m.name index of string. Something like that. To find out whether the module fits this pattern. So at this point, you actually have access to the M as well. So you could do like any kind of weird regex you wanted in there. Instead of putting an index of, you could do a regex on the module. And then at that point, it works kind of like the config function. So you do have a copy of the module at that point. So then you can modify that module, set its path, set its full path, change it, add extra requirements to it if you wanted to. I mean, you can do anything you want to with it because you have that metadata at that point.
Yeah, it loves me that config function.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so this one actually should give you access to the module before the config function. So you could actually modify it this way before Loader runs through and does a lot of explosion on it. So maybe it hasn't even checked dependencies yet at this point because it doesn't even know whether it's going to be working with this module yet. So it's only got the temporary module data that it uses as it starts the process. And at this point, you get access to it beforehand, and then the config function gets it afterward.
And then it's going to, based on the return value of that module, it's going to then explode the requirements and then run through the same process again?
And then run through the config function.
Run through the config function.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so this happens before the require stage happens. So this is just determining whether I'm supposed to use this or not. And then this says, yes, you're supposed to use me here.
So what I'm thinking about is it recursive, though, if I have a module that's going to declare its own requirements? Are those requirements then passed through another iteration of the test functions to see, based on an existing pattern, that it can then continue to explode into other special stuff? That might be a little rabbit hole for now.
Yeah, I'd need to see that one.
Okay.
That's one of those I have to actually draw it out on a board because Loader's so goddamn complicated.
Yeah. But I was thinking about this the other day, that you could potentially say, you could create Loader plugins by saying YUI_config dot, groups or modules, patterns and those sorts of things, and just having the set of config functions based on that particular pattern with a test function, or by just using a string pattern if you want to do that, and add all sorts of cool functionality for loading in static files or custom CSS files and all sorts of stuff like that, just by that plugin.
We basically have 3 of those already in Loader, and what I'm wanting to do is move them out so they're more standardized. So we have Gallery CSS, and we have 2 and 3.
Right.
Or YUI2 dash pattern. Right. Those 3 patterns are already built into Loader. But what I would like to do is standardize how we do those and move them out so that they're separate logically wise, so that somebody could then create their own the same way we do ours.
And create a tutorial for creating Loader plugins.
Yes.
Sweet. Because that's already a function that's there. That's the big point, right?
Yeah. That's the great part about it is all of that's there. It's just now it works.
Yeah.
And it works really well. So I'm very, very, very happy with it. And it's pushing me, to the next step of Loader, which is tearing a lot of it apart and doing it again.
Doing it again. Yeah.
Yes, that's a lot of the stuff I've been doing with Loader. One of the other things that I've made sure to do is that we can see here that the code coverage for Loader is at 89.49% of functions have been covered, or lines, and then 82% of the functions have been covered.
Green is good.
Yes, so I'm working on those every day. For anybody asking why it's not 100%, there's a lot of parts in Loader in C that it forks for browsers, so you'll need to know that. That this is being tested in IE8, so there is some code that's not being executed in here. Hopefully,
like an aggregate coverage when you actually run this in various browsers would be higher than
that. Right. So that's what I've actually been working on over the last couple of days, is to get us an aggregate of a couple of browsers. That way we can see it. Because core also is sitting at 89 and 88%, but depending on the browser you run it in, it's going to come up a different number.
Yeah. That's YUI core.
Yeah. So that's YUI core. And a big chunk of that has to do with lang. So the lang modules, it only executes certain parts of the lang functions in IE because it doesn't have native for each and stuff like that. And then in Firefox, the numbers are even lower because it's not running all the IE code. It's shortcutting to the Firefox code. Right. So there's a lot of stuff in there, especially in core and Loader, it's using like event listeners and stuff that since our event doesn't exist yet, we've got forks for add event listener. So when you run it, there's these little chunks that just don't quite get run because there's no way to run them, in both the browsers. So once I can get those reports stabilized a little bit better, it'll be much nicer to see these things being 90 plus code coverage on everything. So then I feel better making changes, because then if I can make changes, I know my test package is actually covering everything that it's supposed to cover.
Right. Yeah, I have a lot of tests to write for the event system.
And then let's see.
Quick explanation of resolve. Gabe, I would recommend just waiting for the YUI library recording. You can just listen to it a little bit later.
All right. So the next thing that I'm working on around Loader is the standalone Loader. So I've got a prototype running that only has YUI Loader exposed on the page. YUI is not there. You can see here that it's loading loader-min. If you guys can see that, I might need to. If I can bump up the Firefox.
You can actually do control zoom in as in zoom in the viewport to the entire window. Hold down control and scroll.
You have to enable it.
Oh, there you go. That works too. Cool.
I knew I could do that one.
Sort of. No, that's better. That's readable.
All right, so this is definitely a hacky little prototype, but it's a proof of concept. The way this actually works is that there's I'm grabbing the YUI core, I'm grabbing get, and I'm grabbing loader, and that's it. Loader base. So it has no YUI metadata.
Mm.
It has just the bare essentials of what it needs to run. And then I'm wrapping that thing in this pretty little anonymous function. And this anonymous function...
the anonymous function is primarily to prevent leakage?
So that's the thing. This anonymous function right here, I set var YUI, and then I create an object called var exports, so it fakes a JavaScript module.
Okay.
And YUI sees that and says, hey, I'm supposed to attach there and not to window. So the core file never attaches itself to the window because it finds the exports object, which is what this is designed to do, you know.
Okay.
So at this point, exports.yyui is what will be there.
Okay.
So now YUI never gets into the global scope.
Mm-hmm.
And then I instantiate a quick YUI. So it just instantiates what I have. So at that point, it's only attaching get, loader base, and YUI base, and that's it. And then I just set window.YUI loader equals y.loader. Basic and simple. So now I have a YUI loader global object that's actually pointed to the y.loader off of a YUI instance.
So the y.dot instance is just sandboxed away from there, so you're exposing the loader for that.
Yes, so the YUI instance is completely hidden. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever sees it. And then you've got a YUI loader global.
With no metadata.
With no metadata. So, for example, this one, you can see this is the code. I've got a foo module with a path that requires Baz and bar.
Mm.
Baz has a long path. Bar has a short path. You know, this is using the shortcuts for the metadata, so the metadata is all nice and tiny.
Yay.
And then I'm requiring foo and some CSS. So at this point, I should get foo, I should get Baz and bar, and I should get some CSS.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm using a new method that I added to the loader prototype called load, which is basically the callback for YUI use at this point. So it will be in the future.
Okay, so the load method right now is in core for 3.5.0,
yes.
And it's just being also leveraged here for the standalone.
Yeah, so it is in 3.5.0 core. It will be in 3.6. That will be what we actually use from the YUI use statement.
Okay.
The YUI use statement is actually using the old loader.insert method.
Yeah.
So it'll use this one
with an underlying implementation change.
Yep.
But so explain again. In this call, loader.load is doing what?
It does exactly what you think it's going to do. It's going to actually go through and resolve.
The require in the configuration of the loader instance is
basically what's the use command.
Okay.
Exactly. So this is all basically taking what you do inside of a YUI use statement with the variables you give it and the callback, and this is the raw loader form of this. This is how loader does this stuff under the hood. But at this point, it gives you the ability to use this without a YUI seed file, without YUI itself, without knowing the YUI use, without having any YUI modules. So there's nothing available here except what you put in this modules.
Cool.
And then when you do a load, it actually does the get under the hood. You go out and fetch everything, and then fire the callback on the on end event.
Okay, so then
the E that it passes in here is whatever get gives it back. So it could be a failure, it could be a success.
Okay, so in this case, the return value of load, or the function, the parameter passed to the function callback to load, is not an instance of Y. It's not an API host object like it is as used in YUI. So
it's actually the second argument that gets passed into the YUI use callback. So there are two arguments that come back to the YUI use. There's the instance, and then there's the loader information on whether it was a success or a failure, the data that it got in.
Okay.
That's what this argument is. This is technically the second call to the use.
Okay, so then in this case, we're assuming that that baz.js, bar.js, and those are actually creating global APIs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so each one of these right now, they're actually calling a log method, which I've actually defined globally up here to write to my demo. So you can see when it loads this page, it actually loads my requirements. So it goes bar, baz, and then foo, because that was the way they were setting their requirements.
Right.
And then the page changed with CSS and colors and stuff to show that the CSS file was loaded.
Okay, so then, all right.
So that was all kind of cool. The other thing is though, I've got to pin up YUI with it as well. So I added that expose method. So there's an expose method on there that's kind of similar to the opposite. Yeah.
So we have pimping and exposing.
Yes, pimping and exposing. I forgot my big hat too. So it's kind of the opposite of the no conflict that you see in a couple other libraries. So they don't like blow away whatever was there.
Right.
You could actually use this YUI loader on the same page that YUI is on, and they're never going to interact with each other. They're not going to blow each other away. They're not going to bust anything up unless you want it to. So you can call loader.expose, and what loader.expose will do is it will actually go get everything else it needs to make a functional YUI instance, as in the loader metadata and everything else, reattach itself to it, and then expose window.ui. So then you've got a global YUI object that you can mess with. So say if you wanted to use the power of loader to load up everything that you needed core right now to get on your page. This is the core of my code. These are the things that are required to run, and YUI is not part of that. I mean, maybe YUI is not the thing that's the core of your page. Maybe you're loading socket.io and you're loading some CSS files and stuff like that you need loaded. But then when somebody clicks on a button, you need Node at that point, or you need a widget like autocomplete or something like that. At that point, you could call loader.expose, and loader would just go fix itself and give you a YUI instance and say, here, now YUI is here, I'm good to go. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You can have it without YUI, or you can have it on its own with YUI. So if we look at it here, we've got the same demo as before with our modules. But then inside of the load method, I'm calling YUI loader.expose, and then I'm using Node to do a little bit of style stuff. So it's going out and fetching all these little things first, and then sometime later, doesn't matter when, you can call YUI loader.expose to actually go get the rest of YUI and have it available on your page.
Oh, interesting. And so the callback in that case is actually the YUI global.
Yeah. Well, it'll set the window.ui anyway because it can't go fetch anything because in this case the YUI add calls.
So that's technically unnecessary to have the YUI passes.
Yeah, it's unnecessary, but it's just I like giving you both options. Yeah. But either way.
Take a scope lookup.
So you can see here it's doing the same thing that the other one was doing. All items have been loading, but now it's exposing YUI and fetching Node, and you can see here that it went out to our server and picked everything up.
What you don't see, what the people that are listening don't see is that Dave is doing like the Vanna White hand.
Yes.
By his screen right now. It's very lovely.
Yes. I'm not wearing a dress either.
We've gone pimp exposed and not wearing a dress. That's not going well.
You gotta love having me in town, don't you? So you can see here that the first thing it did was it actually went out and fetched features, and then the YUI loader, the loader YUI module, which is the YUI metadata, and Intel base, because those are the requirements that loader needs to run. So it went and actually fetched the things that it didn't know about that it needed. And then once it did that, it fired off the combo URL that went and picked up everything else it needed for Node, because that's what I asked for.
Loader uses Intel base?
Yeah.
Wild. Huh.
And it uses Intel base because it needs to run through and resolve the language packs and stuff like that. I want to get rid of that too. That's another subject. So what it did was, this is the exact same demo that we had over here. You can see, bar baz foo, everything's loaded, and then it went and actually fetched Y node, and it changed the color, and it did a couple of Node style things here to set the background color and get the background so you can see that it's loaded,
Right.
So it went and did its job.
Yep. Sweet. So what's the plan for YUI Loader going forward? Is that something that's just a side project, or is it going to get cleaned up?
It's definitely going to be cleaned up. I haven't decided on it being a new product yet, but I'm leaning toward it.
Yeah.
There's still quite a few things inside of core and loader that need to be cleaned first before I can do that.
Yeah.
And that being a lot of the each and the array and object stuff, where I'm going to try to be pulling some of that out of loader and have it fall back to just regular 4 ins and 4 i's. Yeah. So it doesn't have the as on property check, because we're getting eaten up by the has on property check on all these things that it has to run through.
Right.
So Ryan and I have been talking a lot about putting in like a safe each versus a non-safe each.
Right.
And and stuff like that, and to help us, cut back these function calls and these property checks. And and at that point, what I'll need to do is I'll need to also run through and find out how much of like array and object is actually being used inside of Loader. Because right now you can see that it's pulling 70K, but that's actually 16K gzipped. So it's not that bad once it's gzipped.
Yeah.
But I would like it smaller.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's raw unminified 70K.
No, raw that's minified 70K. Well, no, that is raw.
Yeah, Loader.js, so that'll be raw. So that is all
the Loader min.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we got 18K coming off of this one because it's being served from Dropbox, so it's probably being gzip from them. So yeah, so it's pulling an 18K there, but I'm not happy with it being that much. So what I have to do is I have to analyze a lot of Loader and core and find out what they're using under the hood. How many of the lang items are they using? How many of the array items are they using? How many of the objects, methods are they using? And see if we can maybe even bust out the array and object methods to smaller chunks, so that core can only include the things that it absolutely needs, and then have the extras. So we could have array, and then maybe move some of these ones that that are not used inside of the seed and inside of Loader, and move them back into array extras and object extras.
Totally.
So they're not relied on, or they're not even being pulled if they're not absolutely necessary.
Right.
And that would help us pull our stuff down too.
Yeah. Or something either like array or array core or something.
Yeah. So we have array and array core and object core, and then those are the pieces that actually get put into YUI core. And then Loader base can use, only use the ones that it actually needs.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That'll be good to like.
Yeah, but there's
for the case of the seed or just the Loader core.
Well, there's a lot of them in there that I have to search through, because the way the code was written now is that it did a global alias to Y object each, and then through the rest of the code it's like O each, and then sometimes it's Y.object.each, and sometimes it's Y object.each. Because these are all pulled in from like 4 or 5 different files.
Right.
So they're stitched together. So there's a lot of duplication that happens in there too. And there's some duplication in like array and object that we do the detection of whether it's a safe thing or not. We do it at the top of each one of those files, but eventually those two files get put together.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff in there that we duplicate because of the fact they're in these separate files. And there's right. Yeah, we use a build to combine it, but we've also had different people working on these different things who've got different aliases and different shortcuts that are all for the same stuff. So it makes it really difficult to figure out where these things are at. So I'm in the process of going through and stabilizing them all, so I know where they're all at, and then I can go through and start weeding them out and taking the parts out. And, there are some places that we use Y each just because it's there, and it doesn't do us any good at that point. We just do a for in around it and skip all the has-on property checks, skip all the anonymous function creations through those loops, especially in really hardcore places where Loader's running through resolve, and it's running through requires, and it's running through the sort methods. It's running through hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times to put these modules together. The faster I can get that to do that, the better.
Yeah, we definitely want to optimize the core.
Right. So I'm just doing I'm doing what I can in the places that I can that I feel safe to do it, and I don't want to make too many large changes at once, because then it could lead to instability, and I don't want.
That's what test coverage is for.
That's right. That's why I spent months and months and months, and I have no hair.
You didn't have any hair before.
Yeah, but I have less of it now.
You have less than 0.
Yeah, so that
holes in your head instead of hair.
All right, so that's what I've got for Loader. Anybody got any questions on that one?
Let's see.
If anybody's got any for that?
Yeah, if you have any questions in chat, speak up.
We have Evan here now to talk about the book.
Oh yeah, Evan is in the room, and if you have any questions for Evan, you can pipe up in chat, and I'll put him on mic.
So is it true that there's an ebook? Is it true there's going to be like an earlier ebook release of the?
Yeah, I was actually. The question is it true there's going to be an early release of the book? I'd actually talked with my editor about that, and there were some plans for that. I actually need to follow up with her on whether we're actually going to be able to get something out, a couple months before. So I cannot make a promise on that right now. I apologize.
You could make a promise. It would just be.
It could be a lot.
We're in, we're in election. We're in campaign season. You can make all the promises you want.
That's true.
No one's going to believe a word of it.
But I don't have a super PAC to back me up. So.
Well, there will be an ebook. It's whether or not it's coming before the print.
Right. So O'Reilly has this program called. Well, they have rough cuts where they actually do ebook releases like as you're writing the book, and then they have another thing called early release, which sounds like they're letting out criminals, but actually they're letting out a book, where they take the complete rough draft and put it out as an ebook.
Oh wow, the rough draft. Okay.
Yeah. So. So I was talking with my editor about doing that, but so far I don't actually have a version out. So as far as ebooks in general go, O'Reilly does both Dead Tree and ebook versions, and when you get the ebook, you get it in multiple formats. You'll get it in PDF, EPUB, Kindle, and maybe one or two others. Yeah. So EPUB is the format that iBooks. And they're all DRM free, so you can copy them to however many devices you want, back them up wherever.
And for those of you that love the sound of Evan's melodic voice, he will not be doing an audiobook version of it.
Reading.
Angle bracket, single quote. Thinking about Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, if we get Sam Jackson, then there might be an audiobook version.
I'll do that one.
And please, go the F to YUI 3.
Yeah.
Stop using YUI 2.
Yes, please.
So did I read that correctly then? You are handing it off February 15th?
That's right. So I received all technical edits from people both not in the YUI community and in the YUI community, and some even on the YUI team, which is exciting. And in this room.
And thank you, everyone in the community, for your technical reviewing of that.
Very in fact, I got tons of reviews from people out in the technical community, lots of feedback, and that was just really, really great to see. So I really appreciate that.
That's what the title of the book is.
The title of the book is the YUI 3 Cookbook. And you can actually find it on the O'Reilly site if you search. They have a little landing page for it.
What's the animal?
The animal is we had a big discussion about the animal, which people suggested velociraptors and T-Rex.
It's just a standard. You always have to suggest the velociraptor.
Honey badger.
Honey badger. There was some weird crab thing that Dave suggested. I think the winner was someone wanted the YUI the J-pop singer on the cover. Who's technically a mammal, so but we're going with the spotted couscous, which is a rodent from New Zealand. So there you have it.
It has claws.
It has claws. It's a marsupial. Actually, it's not a rodent. It's
Next
a marsupial.
YUI comp has to be New Zealand.
I'm all for it.
All right. Let's
So for all of our YUI fans in New Zealand, you can start setting up the conference for us for YUI Conf 2012.
Or countries like New Zealand, like Australia.
Countries like New Zealand.
Carnivore or marsupial? Or not marsupial?
That's claws.
It has claws, but it is a vegetarian.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's also couscous, but it is not a grain.
It's spelled.
It is an animal.
It's spelled with U's, not OU's.
That would be a pretty lackluster qualifying. It's a pile of grain.
That's not threatening at all.
It has claws, though, coming out of the grain.
We've moved on from being hunter-gatherers and now we're farmers.
That's right. We're an advanced civilization. That's why.
That's true.
So the one bit of technical news, just aside from the dates, is that the cookbook, right now I'm basically just bringing all the examples up to 3.5.0, so uniformly across the board. That means fixing up the data table recipes. That means the router versus controller is fixed, and a bunch of other things throughout the book.
So you're technically done. Yeah, you're living in the future right now.
I'm living in the future. So what
you still have a couple of weeks to make your code wrong.
Right. So what I'm doing is I'm testing against PR2, and then at the very last minute I'm going to do a sub PR2 to just 3.5.0, and I'm going to cross my fingers and trust that no one on this team will break any of my examples.
Have you done any examples with Button?
Yes.
Oh God.
Button example. So all I did, so I did throw in at the last minute and at great expense a CSS button recipe. So
Okay.
just the styling, and I mentioned, there's also some toggling functionality. But all I did, I just threw it into the CSS chapter because the CSS chapter needs some love and the buttons look nice. So.
Alrighty.
So that's it. Are there any other specific questions about the spotted couscous or anything else?
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thank you, Evan. Cool. Now back to the wonderful world of
YUI on Node.
YUI
There's
and Node.
actually some questions
Yeah.
about
Got
Loader.
Oh, loader question.
This one from Hello. Hi, any plans to make Loader resemble or compatible with AMD?
That's
Another
a
module deployer?
that's
Tricky.
yeah. It would be very, very tricky because they're fundamentally backwards from each other. Because they assume file path means where the file is loaded, and we want metadata. So it theoretically can. The goal is to actually make the patterns and the configurations and stuff, plugins for Loader.
Yep.
To where we could potentially write an AMD style loader or a plugin for Loader. I'm not sure whether I highly doubt that will be official, but it would be something that I would work with somebody else to build that plugin and put up on GitHub somewhere, and people could use it if they wanted to.
There's also a
Can I
question.
use YUI modules? If I use AMD, can I use YUI modules?
Sure.
Can I load YUI?
Well, you'd have to load YUI in order to load YUI module.
As long as you load the core, you don't need YUI Loader to get the modules in there. Yeah, you could use AMD to load the modules. You just be responsible for
Recreating the
figuring out
metadata,
the
right?
metadata.
Yeah.
So,
There is no combo handling part of the spec for AMD, right? Isn't it specifically not combo handling?
I don't know. I mean, James Burke is in the room, so maybe he can fill us in.
Not that I've seen. I mean, you can build a combo loading service for that. I guess.
I thought it was more oriented towards build time optimization.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And you can build whatever you need to for it, but I haven't seen anything. But I haven't dove too deep into it either.
Okay.
There was also another question about Yahoo Mojito. I don't know if any of us are.
That might be a question to take up either in the IRC channel or on the forums. Maybe.
I know they're doing a public release of that very soon, but I don't have dates. I know they're like working on public docs.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like weeks or maybe a few months.
So as of February 9th, 2012, soon,
Yes.
there will be some sort of public thing with regards to Mojito. Okay, we got 12 minutes left, and Dave has more than 12 minutes of content to talk about Node. Make it happen in 10.
Okay, so we completely rewrote all of our Node.js support in 3.5. So my old package is not going to be the one that we're going to use from now on. We're going to use the YUI package, which will be straight up YUI with one node dependency, and that's it. And we're going to use Mikhail Rogers' request library under the hood for get and IO because it's so damn cool. And we are not going to have an official DOM support inside of it. I do have an example that will go out with 3.5 that will show you how you can use a DOM on the server, but we will not ship support out directly inside of YUI with it. We want to keep it as lean and as tight as possible.
Largely because it's impractical on the server.
Yeah, well, it is very impractical on the server at the moment, but it does have its uses. It's good for doing some simple screen scraping and spidering and stuff like that. It's not that bad. But when you're putting it under the kind of stress that YUI is being put under in Mojito, we can't do that.
Right.
So we moved it completely out, and I went ahead and I built an example because a lot of people like to use it. So I'm showing you how you can use JS DOM or any other DOM library. So that's the whole point, is you can put any DOM library you want in it, and we're not picking the one you should be using. So you could use a Rhino with a DOM. You could use any kind of DOM you want,
Rhino has a DOM? I thought it was
Well,
just
it's
JS.
ENVJS thingy. So I mean, you could make any DOM work with it. That's the whole point. You could use a C++ module that gave you a DOM. You know, it doesn't matter because I just show you the simple ways of this is how you configure YUI to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And YUI will use it if it's there. You know, I can't guarantee that it's going to pass all of our tests because DOMs are tricky, but it's still, you know, it'll still run.
Right.
Some of the other things that we've modified is we've modified how you require YUI. We've made it a lot more NPM and AMD stylish on the server. So here, you can just do a regular require YUI. Not big enough.
There you go.
There you go. So we got the regular, you know, just like you use it in the browser. You'd have YUI use, you know, YQL, whatever. But you can also just say var y equals require YUI/YQL. And under the hood, we're going to actually give you back a YUI instance with YQL bound to it. So we're going to do the use everything for you and just export you that one variable back that already has YQL attached to it. So that allows you, as the end developer, to use YUI under the hood to build a Node module, but they don't even have to know that you're using YUI. Because at this point, you could have, like this example here, I've got this cool module that says, get all this data from YQL. And actually, under the hood, it's using YUI's YQL to fetch that data. And then that's all somebody has to do. You know, they require your module and say, get YQL data, and under the hood, YUI is doing all the heavy lifting for you. So you still get to write, you know, your JavaScript in YUI the way you would normally do it. And you get to leverage the fact that we're allowing you to export your stuff in sync, so you could actually require a module this way.
Right. Synchronous loading of modules makes more sense on the server side. So this is actually in keeping with a lot of modules, a lot of Node modules that will create and return an object that has an API on it. Right. So which is exactly how YUI works, just in general, because we host our API on the Y. So here we are using YUI/YQL, and you get the API back.
Right. So one of the other things we did too is that when you do require a submodule like that, we share the same YUI instance underneath the hood. So if you require, like this, if you require YUI YQL, you can tell that there's a y.YQL, but there's no y.base because you only asked for YQL. Right underneath that script, you can also call require YUI base. And at that point, it's going to just do a y.use on the first instance and grab base. So YQL and base will both be true in the second.
So that's actually a departure from the sandboxing model that we use on the client side, which I would be curious to see folks that are using YUI in Node on the server, if that sort of pattern seems intuitive, seems correct in that coding environment, or if it might feel more natural to have a separate sandbox instance.
Yeah, we went round and round on it, and that's why we went with this as the simple use case.
Yeah. You
can still do uses, or you can still do like you normally did before, and do a require, and then do a YUI.use on whatever you want, have your own sandbox.
Okay.
And you can have your own instance under the hood. If you need to have them separate, you can. But in the use case that we're looking at here, people pretty much want the same thing. What they want is they want YQL right now to do what they need to do. And then if you call this certain other method that needs something else, I need to go out and get something else, but I don't want to blow away everything I already had.
Right.
You know, because at that point you could actually go from your module to other modules. If you're requiring them inside of Node, that Y would get passed around every time you do a require. So you could have extra files that you're requiring in that are using the same Y from the first one, and you're trading data with it. So you can apply something, your YUI.myCoolModule will be there in both of those files instead of just in one.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking of the benefits of that use case versus the use case where you have the inclusion of a module by another script might affect the behavior of a module that was previously included. But in that case, you do have the sandboxing option to create a YUI instance on your own just using require YUI.
Yeah, so that's the, you know, we have full support for modules and requires. You know, you can create your own custom ones. And then you can load debug versions by loading YUI/debug, and it'll give you a copy of the YUI debug file. You can do the same thing with modules. You can say require YUI/YQL/debug, and you'll get the YQL debug file and nothing else debug. So we made it pretty simple to use. Requires the way that you would use it inside of Node. This is the way you would expect to load a module inside of Node, but we're doing our thing under the hood and playing nice, you know, with the environment.
Yeah, we want to
and
make it feel like that environment.
Right, we're making ourselves fit in this environment a lot better. I mean, we were fitting pretty good before, but now we're fitting right on.
Do you want to say something about there's a minor behavior change in the log output that YUI 3 versus the YUI NPM packages do?
Yeah, so the default one in my old one, debug was on, and I included the debug output.
So you included the debug output where?
So
the console?
in the seed. So the seed actually had all the ylog files in it, because what I was doing was actually taking the modules that were in there weren't minified modules, or they weren't raw modules. They were just the straight up debug files.
Okay.
So whenever you included YUI, you automatically got all of our debugging up front. Now you don't, because it behaves properly. The build step doesn't. The build step, you know, because we're using a real build step now to generate this NPM package.
They're all grown up.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, now this is official source tree.
Yeah.
Before, this was my one-off that I was wrapping a bunch of stuff because none of this stuff was in core because it wasn't stable enough. Now it is. And the NPM package is actually built from our source tree. If you cd into source YUI, you can say make NPM or ant, I think it's ant-f npm.xml or something like that. It'll actually generate the NPM build in our source tree. So it will have the NPM package right there. So you could generate an NPM package directly from our source tree and install it locally right now.
That said, we have NPM support anyway out of box.
Right. That's the whole point. It's completely out of the box, but it does require a build step. So you can't just go into our directory and just say, start using YUI.
No, I mean, if you have a node installed and you have NPM installed, you just say npm.i-g YUI, right?
Right, but that will get you PR2.
Oh, that gets you PR2.
That will get you PR2.
You want the latest and greatest, then you have to
right.
wait for the NPM module to get updated.
Right.
Which is going to happen in 3.5, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Or you could do it from the source tree, like I said. The NPM package can be built from our source tree. There's no magic happening behind the hood. It's all up in our repository. You could create it, and then it creates I think it's a build-npm directory in our source tree. So we got build and then build-npm.
Okay.
If you just do a require on that directory, you're good to go. You can start using YUI right out of the source tree.
Awesome. So we have the same sort of support for running on Trump for our JavaScript sources and client as we do for the node modules as well. Yeah. So this page I'm showing is actually going to be the new Node.js landing page for YUI. So we have documentation. Hot damn.
Yes, we have a full landing page, and right now I have 2 examples. So there's the example of how to use the DOM. So it actually shows you everything you need to get JS DOM to work inside of YUI, including, you know, nice little examples. You can see the output, even rendering a widget.
So some of the work that Satyen has been doing is on a string widget string renderer, and so hopefully soon we'll be able to, maybe in 3.6, start utilizing that to be able to render our widgets.
Yes. Yeah, so we
strings on the server.
Right. So the other thing I didn't mention is that in 3.5, Ryan so nicely put in handlebar support. So we have a y.handlebars inside of core, and we're going to be using that as most of our string rendering. So we will be able to render our stuff on the server without a DOM. And
at some point we're going to have to do a real code push through the modules that already exist, through the widgets that already exist, to migrate them over into a string rendering, so that there's better support for node environments.
Yeah, so then we also have how to package your own script. So I even wrote an example of how you can create your own YUI module and package it as an NPM module and give it out to other people, and it will use YUI under the hood.
Oh, very nice.
This is just my recommended way of doing it. Ryan and I have had discussions on these several times about what's the best way to package these things up. You know, so I even show you your package JSON file, how to create it, how to do your exports, you know, everything you need to do. And what's really interesting about it is that you can do, there's really 2 ways. You can either bundle this thing up as a solid module that somebody can use, but there's also, I want to use your module in my YUI code.
Right.
So I show you the best approach of being able to create your module so it fits both ways. So you can actually do something like that. inside of your Node.js modules. So you can say, I want this module, and I want to use that module in my code. I don't want you wrapping YUI around it or anything. I just want you to give me back your module metadata so I can load you up and run it the way I want it to. So it fits both of the use cases. It's either one, this is my standalone module, or two, I want to use that module in something else I'm building. So those are pretty good ones. I'm going to have examples for I/O and stuff like that too once I/O gets completed and writing it. I'm not done with it yet.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. We've got we've got all sorts of great changes to Loader. We've got standalone Loader. We've got new documentation and better NPM packaging and support for fetching modules in a Node environment. All coming in 3.5, already available on Trunk. And
on NPM. So NPM has PR1 and 2.
Oh, it does?
Yes. And YUI doc right now runs off of PR2.
Cool. All right. Well, we're out of time, so we're going to now stay in this room and go into another meeting. And thanks, everyone, for calling in. And we'll get this recording up on YUI Theater, probably later on today. And for Dave and Eric and Ryan and Evan and Derek and Matt and myself, thanks for dialing in, and we'll see you guys next time.